So when what is it like to be part of a startup, to realize, okay, this isn't going the way I planned. I thought I was going to be my own boss. I thought, this is all going
Yeah,
to grow and I'm going to grow with it. And then say, okay, now I got to find plan B. You know,
yeah.
what was that like for you then?
Um, that was hard because I wasn't thinking about Plan B until the moment literally like just happened. So I remember it was we had closed an acquisition of a company I didn't think we should be doing the deal for,
Yeah.
and that basically was forced like close this deal. I don't care what you say, and I said okay. So I closed it, and that was like a Friday in July, and literally on the Monday I gave in my resignation, and I'm like, well, I'll give you 3 months to find your replacement and to deal with this, but it was like a decision that I made on a weekend after basically like working all out to get this like company bought. So Plan B became really trying to evaluate after the fact of saying, okay, so now I've ripped the band-aid. Like there was no like thinking twice about this thing, and I had some time to reflect. But um, I was really faced with a few decisions of do I go to a large company, do I go to another startup, or do I try to find something in between? And I was just too jaded. I think people don't talk about the morning impact that ends up happening when you're in startups that either don't go the way you planned, or even the ones that are actually like successfully exit. Like this is their heart and soul for like everybody. Like I couldn't go out and people were always asking me like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And things would be great with the company, and I'd
Yeah.
still always be there, even if I was like out with my friends or family, whatever it was. So I had a lot of more time in my hands to try to like sort out what I wanted to do, and I knew what I didn't want, but I wasn't really sure what Plan B was going to be and what I did want. So for me, that's kind of the reality of how I actually ended up at PwC. Was I figured I had more time to buy myself to sort out really what Plan B was actually going to be.
Gotcha. So you left PwC to be part of a startup and you came back to PwC afterwards to really look at, well, plan A didn't go exactly as planned.
Yeah,
And while I figure out what plan B is, let me go back to a place that I'm familiar, where I am successful, where I am certainly valued. And
yeah.
and
So I
then how
think
did you end up where you are now within the company?
so. Really, within the first few months, it was great. I had a lot of people who initially asked me like, "Why would you go back to where you first left?" And I had other offers from other firms even to go there, and it was because it wasn't like I left on bad terms. That I might as well go in there and be positioned automatically again in terms of like where I was before.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to actually do anything to get the recognition that I was getting from beforehand. I just had new clients and new things to do. So I tried to be the prototypical like auditor and what everyone should be aspiring to be, and it wasn't me. So within a few months, I just started running around again and missing the startup space. And PwC did have a startup practice, so at least then I could position myself and say, I don't want to work on the clients right now, but I'm happy to go out and get in the market and be more of a business development role.
Hmm.
So that's what I started to do to kind of like get the passion back a little bit, was not really ingrain myself in the details and just be somebody that people could call on and talk to and just get like general discussions going.
Gotcha. So this is super valuable because I think a lot of people think of being your own boss as, like I was saying to you earlier, just when you either start a company or you're part of a
Yeah,
startup or you launch a business of your own, whatever that is.
yeah,
And, I think BYOB is more than that. Being your own boss
yeah,
can be something equally, if not more powerful within a company.
yeah.
What was the process that you took? Because I think there's a lot of learning for people there to say, hey, I'm in a company that I didn't start. I'm in a huge, massive, PricewaterhouseCooper internationally. I don't know how many thousands of employees worldwide.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, how did you get the confidence, or what did you do rather, to start approaching partners or approaching your peers and saying, hey, I'm not happy in this particular role and I want to take on more initiative? How did that actually shape up for you?
So I think about, if you have ideas and you've been thinking outside the box, or that's just kind of your personality, or you want to be working on something, there's one thing to start to do it on your own time, and that's where I started doing it at the beginning. And I remember like my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was saying like, there's a lot of like your free time that you're giving up, and this doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's
Right.
all a process at the end of the day. So, and again, it wasn't like I hated what I was doing. Like I loved going out and being part of that atmosphere again. But the part that changed it for me internally is you need to think and kind of like roadmap a little bit at the accounting firm or at the company that you're at. who the people are that are like your bright stars or your future leaders or even the current leaders that you know can get things done or to drive it home for you. So for me, there was two partners in particular. So there was this one guy who was running the startup practice where it was going okay, but not really going well. So I knew he would listen to what I had to say because it couldn't get any worse than it was for him. So there was only upside in what I could tell him.
Yep.
But the other person was more of the real like evangelist for me internally because he was very well liked at the firm and was one of those like rising stars of the firm as a partner. So, it probably was in his first 5 years of being a partner,
Yep.
but had everybody's respect and people really thought highly of him. So I made sure that I kind of befriended him and talked to him a little bit about what I wanted to do. And he got what I was saying immediately. So I just started utilizing both of them to start to get my message up the channel.
Makes good sense. Okay, so strategy number one is look for your allies. Look where you have, relationships inside that you can go and turn to trusting relationships.
Yeah. But I think you have to, before you get to that point, I think you need to know what you want to do. You don't have to have it like perfectly thought out. Like my startup practice changes almost every week still in terms of what we're doing and going to the market with, and that's going to like continue to evolve. But you have to have an opinion on what you would do a little differently. I think I had spent enough hours in the startup space that I considered myself like a credible resource, and I wasn't just like taking like a flyer on things. And once I had my opinion, then it's a matter of convincing people, like figure out who those people are and then convincing them.
Love it. So then step number two, what is it that you're trying to convince them of? You have an idea that you want to do something with startups. You want to do some business development. You want to change your typical accounting practice.
I think you're convincing them that what we're doing doesn't work and that there's a better way to do it. Now you gotta, and it's funny, I was talking about this with somebody else today, a different idea, but same concept. Large corporations have a hard time dropping something entirely that they've been doing because for years, you got to remember that someone else has fought to make what they're doing happen. So whether it's an investment in technology that sucks and now all of a sudden you're saying you should drop that and adopt this because this really works. Well, someone else stuck their neck out on the line and got this other thing done. And it's probably the same person that you're going to and saying it's no good and you should do this. So I think you have to approach all this stuff with change within a corporation as an augmentation to what's being done first. Get yourself in the picture and then you can spread it like wildfire and take it over. But you got to get yourself in the door first. So that to me is like convince them that there's an opportunity that they currently are not seeing or not taking advantage of.
I love it. And I think you said something at the conference I saw you speaking at, that if they don't agree with you, if they don't get your message, then you're not being compelling enough in your argumentation.
Absolutely. I think it's again, you're the expert, right? So if you fundamentally believe that no one else is doing it better than you at the company you're at, then you have to have something broken in your communication and talk to your other friends, talk to people who are better on the verbal communication side or on the written communication side. Talk to your friends about putting together a slide deck. I went with a massive slide deck that nobody asked me to do and walk somebody through all that to get them on board and know what your audience will listen to. Someone's going to want a slide deck, but you might talk to the other person who's got ADD and just wants to like talk because you have 10 minutes and after that they're going to be looking at like everywhere else in the room.
Totally. So know your audience.
Absolutely know your audience. Yeah. And again, I think it's just like when somebody tells you no, you have to figure out you got to figure out why they said no. Is it that you're completely off your rocker or more so that you just missed something in your communication? And I got to believe it's usually the second thing more so than the first if you really know your space.
Totally. Love it. And so I always wonder when it comes to becoming a trailblazer, in your office, when you are in a corporate setting or in a company setting, how do you still be that trailblazer and maintain good relationships with those around you who may be thinking, hey, don't push the envelope too far because you're going to call us all up to a higher standard. What's that experience been like for you?
I think it's you're going to face that no matter what, and I think it's if nothing good happens if you don't push past the limit of what it is, and if people are going to be approaching it that way, then those people just need to get the hell out of the way. I'm not one to you got to manage the relationships a little bit and understand that people are going to be slower to potentially change. But just because people are reluctant to doesn't mean they should not go forward and do it.
I love it.
And I think that's, you know, at the end of the day, I think that's the reality of what you got to like. Everybody is set in their certain way. Some people just want to take home a paycheck, and that's awesome for them. Do that, but just get the hell out of my way so I can do what I'm here to do.
I love it. And so how do you qualify or classify what you are there to do? What matters to you?
So for me, what matters is I think the economy has changed. I think our society has changed. And I think PwC still acts like it's 1906. And it's just not the way that I think business should be run. They are very capable of moving quickly. There's a lot of layers of complexity that I think people discount a little bit and don't understand. And I think it's with large organizations in general. Like, they've made massive investments in technology that they're married to. And it's like, again, you to just drop it and move into something else, very difficult to do because that old legacy system is connected to 14 other things and it's a massive project. So people are reluctant to change that way. People are set in their certain ways and think, you know, well, I'm still this large company, so I can continue to run with my status quo. And then next thing you know, you're the typewriter company that didn't adapt, and
or your Kodak,
or your Kodak, right? And it's like it does happen at some point. Like, they might not be able to see who the competitor is today, but somebody somewhere is doing something different. I was like, you know, whether again it's a corporation or a firm who's going to win if they're evolving with what today is like. Love it.
So, do you consider yourself your own boss?
I absolutely do. Now, it's a funny setting. I always feel like I'm a little schizophrenic because it's like I'm my own boss one day, but then it's like that same day for an hour, you're like, oh my God, I hate this. I have to like go and re-explain this to somebody else.
Yeah.
So, nobody's coming down on me to ask me to do anything in particular. I have, for my sake, I've had my clients, which are awesome. I continue to build my business the way I see fit. However, I still need to go up towards my boss and explain to them why they should let me to continue to do what I'm doing, especially if, in my case, it's not like PwC is making money on all these like startup companies. It's a very long-term investment process and long investment in relationships that you're hoping to see what turns out of it. I attribute it the same way that you would if you have somebody who's an entrepreneur who has a venture capitalist like in the game as their supporter. So somebody's giving you a bunch of money. You might argue that you're your own boss, but now you have stakeholders that you need to be responsible for, and it's the same thing that I view my life as.
Oh, I love it. So for those who are potentially thinking about venture funding or investments from companies as large as PwC, what are the types of things that you in your role are looking for these days?
In terms of like companies I'm looking at talking to?
Yeah.
For me, I've now got PwC on the boat of going as early as possible. So if the company's got, usually it tends to be more tech focused that I'm in, but doesn't have to be. I'm looking for people who are about to ride the hockey stick, right? But I don't want to be there when they're about to ride the hockey stick because it's not going to happen that way. There's a relationship that has to be built before that happens. So as early as possible, I think getting people ready for the operational scale early on is something that we're always willing to help do and do at a discounted factor or almost essentially for free for some time. It's a lot easier to clean up on day one versus 2 years later somebody's about to do some big event and there's all this like crap to clean up in the background, which nobody's happy at the end of the day when that happens.
Nobody likes to clean up the poo.
No.
Yeah, I hear you. So, and then for those curious about understanding this world, because there's a lot of people watching these videos who are not even in startup mode yet. They're really they've got an idea, they're thinking, and they're trying to get familiar with a space that they've never even thought about until now. What exactly would a company like PwC help them with?
So what we offer is something called like a startup package, for example. So everybody who has a startup company and they've actually done the part of incorporating a business will do a tax return because tax is everywhere, whether you're American, Canadian, tax returns have to get done. So that's number one. And then for the price of the tax return, we'll start connecting people all over the place. So there's a massive PwC network which we can connect people to, which is one thing. But the theory for me is always if you're an entrepreneur, you need to either meet other serial entrepreneurs who have been there and done that, so you can learn lessons that way.
Yep.
You need access to capital in some form or another, and we can help with that. Or you need help finding revenue and customers in the first place. So if I'm able to solve one, two, or all three of those things for someone, that's really the job. So, we'll charge for a tax return, we'll charge for something maybe a little bit smaller stuff here and there and do some cleanup work. But what you're really paying for when you're working for PwC is access to a network that is otherwise unavailable to you.
Makes sense.
So,
and why does this matter so much to PwC?
I think if you look at the pace of change, companies that are just starting, turn out to be massive companies. You say overnight, but it's like it ends up being a 5 or 10 year window of time, but it's so quick, right? Like you can look at even like the more basic example of like, the big one, obviously, like, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, so
Sure.
like, those are forever. At the same time, it's not that long. Like it's, a 10, 15 year like window for a lot of these companies, and they're the new like big things. So if you're not there, if I can't participate in your pain, I shouldn't get the privilege of participating in your success.
I love it. Pain and gain. Love it. That's a quotable and a tweetable. We'll make sure we'll make it one. That's awesome. And if, from your own experience in the startup and from all of the different startups that you're watching now, if you had some advice for anyone, between 25 and 35 who's looking to either become their own boss in their company where they currently work or to go out on their own, what is it that you think they need to keep in mind?
I think you have to keep in mind that the people that you surround yourself with are going to be the ones who carry you to the top one way or they will carry you down. So it doesn't matter. Everyone's going to have unique backgrounds. I think if you're building a team that doesn't have unique backgrounds and different skill sets, and you just have a lot of the similar aspects of your own self, you're going to miss something along the way because you need differing opinions and different point of views to get somewhere else. So from, even if I look at myself, the first thing that I did is I found somebody who literally manages the entire day-to-day portfolio of clients, who isn't necessarily a hunter, but man, is he ever good at like just organizing the hell out of everything, make sure that all the clients are really taken care of on a day-to-day. That's not me. So he has a very different opinion of like what needs to happen. And I was him when I was at the startup I was at. So I think you have to find people who can complement your skill set, find people who are better than you, because just because you're the leader doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the smartest at everything.
Totally.
And just people who are talented and better. And from there, as you continue to recruit that and build that kind of culture, sky's the limit, I feel like.
Love it. Perfect. I'm so grateful for your time.
Hey, no, I really, really appreciate it.
It's so sweet. And if people wanted to find out more about you, where on the interwebs would you direct them?
So you can find me on Twitter at Eugene Bomba. Look me up on LinkedIn. Those are probably the
two best places.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.